إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد. As human beings, every single person will go through trials and tribulations in life. Not a single person here is going through life without any problems, without stress, without anxiety, without grief. Maybe someone's lost a loved one. Maybe a person is going through tough times when it comes to their business and their wealth, when it comes to their financial affairs. Maybe someone's at school, college, university, and they haven't got the grades that they anticipated, so their life's affected. Maybe people are having marital issues, family problems. Not a single person goes through life without being tested and trialed. And we see in the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the prophets and messengers in general, that not a single prophet, not a single messenger went through life without a trial and tribulation. The companions one day when they were sitting with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said to him, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ayyu nasi ashaddu bala'a, that who from amongst the people went through the most trials and tribulations? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Al-anbiya'u thumma al-amthalu fal-amthal. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the prophets, the messengers, and then the next best and the next best. So it's part and parcel of life, but how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? Firstly, as Muslims, when we look through the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the first few months and years of revelation, there was a period of time where revelation stopped. And these were the days of Mecca. The days of Mecca were extremely tough days. The Muslims, they had their backs against the wall. They were being persecuted. They were being mocked. They were being ridiculed. They were being called names. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was being called a magician, a liar, a soothsayer. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, revelation stopped, and he felt anxious and sad and grieved. Has Allah Azza wa Jal abandoned me? And these are feelings that every single person has. This was the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam feeling these emotions. And sometimes as men, women, humans, maybe coming from the cultures that we come from, we hide these emotions. We hide this grief or this sadness or this anxiety or stress, and we don't come out and speak about it. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in this state, and the non-Muslims at that time, the kuffar of Quraysh, they would mock him. The wife of Abu Lahab would say to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has your shaitan abandoned you? Has your shaitan abandoned you? Meaning that in her words and in her eyes, had Allah Azza wa Jal stopped giving you revelation? And then Allah Azza wa Jal, He revealed the ayat and the surah of Ad Duha. And inshallah, in these next few minutes, this is what I want to focus on. Some scholars have called this surah the antidote to depression. whereby Allah Azza wa Jal, He starts off by saying, وَالضُّحَى, that by the dawn, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى, and by the night as it closes. And we see that Allah Azza wa Jal, He starts off the surah by saying, وَالضُّحَى, by the dawn. Meaning that when the sun rises, it signifies a new day. When the sun rises, it signifies a new day, and what happened before has happened. And you can't change what's happened before. But it's a new day and it's a new start. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us here. That what's happened in the past has happened in the past. And that you've woken up to a new day, a new beginning, a new chapter. And this was the light and the sign to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he hasn't been neglected. He hasn't been forgotten. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى, and when the night it envelops and it closes, meaning that the night is a time for us to sleep. The night is a time for us to sleep. And again, normally when people have problems or anxiety and problems, they'll stay the night awake and they'll sleep during the day. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He tells us in the Quran, وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He tells us that He's made the sleep, our sleep, as a rest for us. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا, and He's made the night as a covering for us. It protects us. Why? Because we know when we're out and about at night, there's problems, there's issues. Whether you're on the streets or whether you're alone at home. That's why we find when people flip their sleep patterns and they'll stay awake all night without a purpose, without a reason, just because that's how they live their life. وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. And Allah Azza wa Jal tells us that He's made the day for us to live and for us to gain our provisions. That's when life happens, during the day. So Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى, and Allah Azza wa Jal is taking a qasam. He's taking an oath by the day and by the night. And we know when Allah Azza wa Jal takes a qasam or an oath by something, it's to draw our attention to it and to alert us. Because Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't take an oath by anything, but only by specific and particular things, to signify the importance of that thing. And the dawn and the morning and this time of Ad Duha is an important time where there's much barakah. And again, we find when we wake up late, we'll find that the day flies by. But when you wake up early and you start your day, you'll find yourself productive. And again, this is a lesson for myself, to you, that we live our lives in the way that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way Allah Azza wa Jal has guided us to. We might look left and right for guidance and theories and concepts, but we have the best theory and concept in the Quran and the Sunnah for us to live our lives, for us to follow and for us to implement. Allah Azza wa Jal then says, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى, that Allah Azza wa Jal has not abandoned you, and He never will. Saying to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah will not abandon you. And He doesn't hate you, He doesn't dislike you. And again, by extension to myself and to you, Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us, regardless of your situation, Allah doesn't dislike you. Allah doesn't hate you. Allah wants the best for you. Yes, Allah Azza wa Jal dislikes and He hates and despises sin. Everybody sins. But as Muslims, as people who with Iman, as people who believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, people who believe in the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal and implement it and practice it in our daily lives, everybody will fall short, everybody has mistakes. They'll trip and they'll stumble and they'll fall into sin. Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Allah does not hate you. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is al-wudud, he is the most loving. And His love encompasses everything. We know from the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, if we really understand the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, and we internalize them and live our lives according to them, He's most forgiving, He's most merciful. When we fall into sin and error, when we truly understand these names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, we will return to Him and will run to Him. Because we know that He is At-Tawwab, Al-Ghaffar, Ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, and so on. It's important to understand these names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. And it's important that when we are down and we're sad and we're anxious about something or we're grieved about something, we look to the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and say, how did he deal with this? He was a human. He had emotions. He lived and he died, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He went through life with trials and tribulations. When he was in the Ghar of Hira, when he was in the cave of Hira, and he would go there to contemplate. And we know the incident of the revelation when Angel Jibreel alayhi salam came and told him to read, and he was frightened, he was scared. He came down from the cave. He was traumatized. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is not me saying, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, he came to his wife Khadija radiyallahu anha, and he said, لَقَدْ خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي. He said that I'm scared, I'm fearful. An angel came and squeezed him and told him something to read, Iqra. It was a traumatic experience for him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was shivering. And who did he go to? Who did he speak to? To his wife Khadija radiyallahu anha. And again, just extrapolating some lessons from this incident. The Prophet ﷺ didn't keep it to himself. He didn't have that fear and keep that fear within himself. He told somebody close to him. He spoke to people. He spoke to the one who is most closest and beloved to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He spoke to his wife. And again, when we build a family unit, this is one of the reasons, this is one of the purposes, that you have people to go to, those closest around you, and you speak to them about your fears. لَقَدْ خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي. The Prophet ﷺ said, I'm scared. I'm scared, this incident has happened, what shall I do? And how did Khadija radiallahu anha respond? She said, Wallahi ma yukhziq Allahu abada. That Allah Azza wa Jal will never abandon you. Allah Azza wa Jal will never disgrace you. إِنَّكَ لَتَصِلُ الرَّحِمِ. You join the ties of kinship. You're good to the poor. You help the needy. You're always there for people. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this is how she responded to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam in his time of worry, in his time of fear, in his time of grief. Again, how are we with our support network? Do we have those people around us who are there to speak to us and are there to listen to us and are there to give us the right advice? Like I mentioned, every person will go through issues in their life. Every single person, no one's excluded from that. But how do we deal with this? Our faith, our iman, our religion teaches us how to deal with things. We have a way of life which is whole and is complete. So how do we deal with this? What do we have in place? How do we take things from our deen, and how do we internalize it and act upon it in our daily lives? And we find from this optimism. When the Prophet ﷺ, when we look at these ayat that Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us, it's telling us to be optimistic about life. Yes, there's trials and tribulations and problems, but there's always optimism. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us, لا طيرة وخيرها الفأل, that there's no such thing as bad omens in Islam. There's no such thing as bad omens. But the best that a person can do is to have optimism. وَيُعْجِبُنِي الْفَأْلِ. The Prophet ﷺ, and what impresses me and what's good is optimism. Optimism in the face of pessimism. Again, when you have somebody who's pessimistic, why me? Why is this happening to me? The Prophet ﷺ is telling us to be optimistic in these situations. Why? وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. Because what's happened has happened. And what's to come is going to be better than what's past. This is what the Prophet ﷺ, this is what Allah Azza wa Jal is telling the Prophet ﷺ, you're in Mecca. You're a minority. You're being tortured. You're being ridiculed. People are against you, your religion, your faith, your people. But no, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. And what's to come is going to be better than what's past. Again, a lesson for myself and for you. What's happened in life has passed. Everybody has something which happened in their life which they regret, or something which has turned them and changed their life, and now they're a better person. The Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca. Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling them that you will return to Mecca as a conqueror with victory. This time that you're in is tough, it's hard. Your companions are getting killed. You're getting ridiculed. But know that what's to come is better. And as Muslims, sometimes we live life and every single thing which is happening to us, we see, or it seems as if it's negative. But this is why we're Muslims. This is why we have Iman. We have Iman in the Day of Judgment. We have Iman in the afterlife. That we know that if things don't necessarily go to plan in this dunya, and if things don't go according to plan in this dunya, then we know in the akhirah that Allah Azza wa Jal has something better for us. And sometimes when we ask for something and we want something, we might think that it's good for us. But Allah Azza wa Jal knows that it's not good. And even though we might beg Allah Azza wa Jal when we ask and we want something, but it never comes to us. Have you ever thought that it's not coming and it's not reaching you because there's something better in store for you? Because maybe that thing that you want is not good for you. This is the mindset of a Muslim, of a mu'min, of a believer in Allah Azza wa Jal, in His qada, in His qadr, in His predestination, and how things are planned out for us. وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. That know that the akhirah and the afterlife is better for us. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he was his last few days, he sat with his companions and he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى خَيَّرَ عَبْدًا بَيْنَ الدُّنْيَا وَبَيْنَ مَا عِنْدَهُ فَاخْتَارَ ذَلِكَ الْعَبْدُ مَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. He said to the companions that Allah Azza wa Jal has given a choice to his slave between the dunya and between going to Allah Azza wa Jal. فَاخْتَارَ ذَلِكَ الْعَبْدُ مَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. But this slave has chosen what's with Allah Azza wa Jal. And the companions that were around him, they didn't know what he was referring to. He was referring to his death. And it was only Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu who realized what was happening and what he was saying. And he cried and he said, we've sacrificed our mothers and fathers for you, O Rasulullah. And the other companions, they didn't know what Abu Bakr was referring to radiallahu anhum. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam chose the akhirah for this dunya, knowing that the end goal is always the akhirah. And everything that we go through in life will pass and will ultimately stand before Allah Azza wa Jal. A day will come where we will stand before Allah Azza wa Jal with everything that's happened in this dunya. But it's how we live our life and how we deal with these trials and tribulations. Life is tough. Nobody says that life is easy. With its problems and its issues. But Allah Azza wa Jal gives optimism and gives hope in His ayat which He revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Azza wa Jal then says, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. That Allah Azza wa Jal will give you what will make you happy and content. Again, whether it's in this dunya or in the akhirah. You will receive exactly what will make you happy. Not in our timeline. We might have a plan in our life, 5 years, 10 years. This is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be, and this is Allah Azza wa Jal will do things according to what's good for us. Because He knows us better than we know ourselves. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And eventually Allah Azza wa Jal will give us victory. Allah Azza wa Jal will give us Jannah, which is what every single person hopes for and strives for, and we live our life for. Allah Azza wa Jal, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Allah Azza wa Jal will give what you will be pleased with. And if Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us that we will be pleased with what He gives us, then who are we to think or to say and to feel that Allah Azza wa Jal is not giving me what I deserve and what I need and what I want? Allah Azza wa Jal knows us better than we know ourselves. And then in the next few ayat, Allah Azza wa Jal then gives us a reality check. We're speaking about all these things about our life and what's happening, and then He reveals to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam three rhetorical questions. He's asking the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa?" That didn't we find you an orphan, and then we looked after you? Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us to look at the blessings we have, to look at the bright side of life. And He's telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're feeling down, you're feeling anxious. Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa. Look back at your life, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling him, didn't we find you an orphan and we looked after you? We gave you people and we gave you the deen, we gave you Islam. We made you a prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa. These are rhetorical questions, again looking at the emphasizing on what's known but's forgotten. These things are known. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam knows that he was an orphan. But Allah Azza wa Jal took care of him. We know that we have problems, but ultimately Allah Azza wa Jal has given us so many blessings. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. That if you were to enumerate and count the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal, we would never be able to count them. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. Allah Azza wa Jal is telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we found you misguided, but we guided you. We gave you Islam. The greatest blessings that a person can have. Again, as Muslims, when we have these trials and tribulations and these problems, in our minds we have a way where we know how to traverse these trials and tribulations. Our deen, our religion teaches us these things. But as for others, they don't have these blessings that Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed us with. وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. And we found you poor and destitute and we gave you wealth. And some of the Mufassirun, they say that this wealth is his wife Khadija radiallahu anha, who we know she was a wealthy person. We found you poor and we gave you a house. We gave you a place to live. We gave you a family. This is what Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and by extension me and you. That you're feeling down, anxious, grieved. But look around you. وَالضُّحَى, wake up. And look at what Allah Azza wa Jalla has given you. فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. The next three ayat. وَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. And as for the orphan child, don't ridicule him. Don't look down on him. And this is the antidote to those who want a way out of their problems. انظر إلى من هو دونك. Look at those who are lower than you. Look at those who don't have much. Then you will realize the blessings that Allah Azza wa Jal has given you. فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he reported that a man came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he complained about his qaswatul qalb. He complained about the hardness that he had in his heart. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if you want to soften your heart, imsah ra's al-yatim, then pat the head of an orphan, or wipe the head of an orphan, and feed a poor person. This will humble a person. Giving in charity, giving to those who are less well off than them. Just by wiping the head of an orphan person, not giving them any monetary value if you can't afford it, but just being nice to people, those people who are below you, benefiting people. The Prophet ﷺ told us, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ, that the best of people are those that give benefit to people and bring benefit to others. This is how we lift ourselves from these problems and trials and tribulations, by looking at those people around us, those people who don't have as much as us, and helping them and supporting them. The Prophet Allah Azza wa Jal, then he says, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. And as for the blessings that Allah Azza wa Jal has given you, then talk about them. I.e., be positive about what Allah Azza wa Jal has given you. Be positive about those things that Allah Azza wa Jal has given you. Even though we find that the prophets and the messengers, they were trialed and went through trials and tribulations. Yaqub alayhi salam, he lost his son Yusuf and Binyamin, but what did he was so sad at what happened, he lost his eyesight. But what did he say? إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, that I turn to Allah Azza wa Jal with my worries and my sadness, and I complain only to Allah Azza wa Jal. Meaning that when you are in this situation, we turn and we return to Allah Azza wa Jal for help and support. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. When it comes to grief and sadness, we know that as Muslims, we have Allah Azza wa Jal, we have the Deen, we have the Prophet, the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's for us to seek out those means which work for us. And Islam is a balanced way of life, where people have depression and people feel sad, and sometimes a person might need therapy. Our religion teacher gives us that spiritual solution to life's problems. But there's nothing wrong with talking to people and seeking help from people, from professionals, from doctors, from those people that know, those people that are qualified. This is what our religion teaches us to do, to seek our guidance and advice from the Quran and the Sunnah. Also, but to take lessons and advice from professionals, people who know what they're doing. The day of Ashura is coming, and just as a reminder to myself and for everyone. Ashura Muharram, the day of Ashura, the 10th day of Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram, i.e. the day of Ashura, is the day where Allah Azza wa Jal freed Musa alayhi salam and his people from the tyranny of Fir'aun. And when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he entered Medina, he saw the Yahud fasting, and he asked, why are you fasting? And they said that this is the day that Allah Azza wa Jal freed our people, freed Musa alayhi salam from the tyranny of Fir'aun. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, نحن أحق بموسى, that we have more right to Musa alayhi salam. And he fasted. And it's the sunnah to fast either the day before the 10th of Muharram or the day after, i.e. the 9th, the 10th, or the 10th and the 11th. And the 10th is this Monday. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to forgive us, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to forgive all those people that have passed away, those people that are close to us and those people that are distant. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقيموا الصلاة.